Good afternoon, everyone. This is Yacine Alvarez from the Federation of Credit. I appreciate everybody taking some time out of their busy schedule to join us today for what I think you will find a really interesting webinar. I heard our featured speaker actually in person about a week ago, and I was blown away by the stuff that I didn't know. So with that, I'm going to share with you some housekeeping issues that I just want to make sure that you're all aware of. So all of your lines are muted. We have a very large number of attendees for today's webinar. If you would like to if you would like to submit a question or there's an issue, please use your chat box on the right-hand side of your navigation bar. And we'll be able to address any questions at the end of the webinar, although I think Robert is so detailed that you may not need that. In addition to that, we will be recording today's webinar. So after this presentation, all of the attendees will receive a copy of Robert Day's presentation, and we'll record it, and it'll be archived on the Federation of Credit website for your review and for sharing with people within your department only. With that, I would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce you to our featured speaker today, Mr. Robert Day, Managing Partner of WeAudit.com. Robert is Managing Partner of WeAudit, as I said, a one-of-a-kind auditing firm that is revolutionizing the world of merchant processing by protecting merchants' profits, often cutting their fees in half. Recognized as an industry expert of merchant processing by a number of major credit associations. He is a highly sought-after speaker, so we're lucky to have him today. For 13 years, Robert was a top executive for one of the largest credit card processors in the country before crossing the aisle and co-founding WeAudit.com. Now, Robert has one simple goal: to educate merchants on how credit card processors use hidden fees to drive up your fees by 30 to 50%. As a former corporate executive and a former business owner, Robert has a special blend of experience and an intimate understanding of the needs of small to mid-sized merchants, as well as Fortune 500 companies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert, and you'll be surprised by what you hear.
Well, thank you very much for that. Man, that's a long thing to have to sit and listen to about myself, I'll tell you. But at the end of the day, we have one real simple goal today, and that is really to make you guys heroes, at your companies. That's a real passion. And I would encourage you, to even go out and look at our website, obviously WeAudit.com, and there's a section in there called the Hero Story. And so we're real passionate about that, and that's why we're here today, to hopefully arm you guys, to give you the tools and the resources that you can go back and really wow your bosses and to really be quite the hero in their eyes. So we'll go ahead and let's kick off, though, before we even get to that. Let me go ahead and throw another freebie out there for you guys, because I think everybody deserves freebies. Everybody loves something for free. So I think most companies also experience fraud. And it seems like something that they're always combating, if nothing else. So if you look there on the screen, it's just the weaudit.com/stop-fraud. There again, you'll be able to, get the resources here to come back and look at this. So don't want to spend too much time here, but it's a great resource. It's a great tool, and you can go out there and snag that. No feed, no nothing, just grab that information, and so like I say, just a nice little free thing. And like I say, at the end of the day, today, what we're focusing on is really making you guys, really well equipped. If we're done with this presentation, hopefully this is what you're going to feel like is the ability to go back and impress your boss. So today we're going to talk about really $100 billion. Now, when I'm live, I kind of always say, well, does anybody know what this is for? What does this represent, $100 billion? And of course, the guy when I just spoke last week, he said, he says, I know, right? So, he had the answer. It's estimated over billings. Now think about this, $100 billion in overbillings. Now, a lot of people would challenge me on that and say, oh, wait a minute, there's no way a bank or processor could be overbilling $100 billion. Well, there is. And I even will say, go back and check. I mean, if you go to any of the major processing banks, the Chases, the Wells Fargos, the Bank of America, you know, Fifth Third Bank, you name it, and you look and you see their information is public, right? You can look and see how much money they make, right? And then you go and you look at that, and then you go do a little research, just use Google, and see how many of millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars they'll be fined for in a given year. And then you look at the next year after they paid all these fines, and guess what? They still made the same amount of money. So I don't know how many companies can really take millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in losses, right? Now, where else are they going to make it up? That's the question, because everything else is regulated. But there is nothing in this industry that makes it regulated. We'll talk more about that in just a second. So it makes it very easy for them to overbill. 95% of merchants, right, the key 95 is kind of critical, because 95% of merchants think they have a good deal. But the reality is 95% of the merchants are being overbilled. Now, it's a real easy thing to figure out if you're in the top 5%, okay, and this doesn't apply to you. If your company is Walmart, if your company is like American Airlines, things like this, major companies that do, I'm talking a lot of business, to where they actually write your own interchange categories directly to your company because you're that big and you carry that big of a stick, you're not in that 5%. Okay, or you are in that 5%. You're not in the 95. But if you're like everyone else, which is, well, most of us, right, then we're going to fit into that 95% category. And again, there's zero government oversight. This is how they get away with it, how they end up taking over $100 billion. You know, I won't go on to tell you a lot about what was said by Senator Dick Durbin, but at the end of the day, he calls this a price-fixing scheme, period. Well, I mean, suffice to say, when somebody just basically calls you a con man, they don't think too highly of you. So I think that's pretty harsh words coming from the Senate. Now, also the other thing that you guys got to realize is right now there's a cost of the biggest disaster of all times, which is the chip and PIN. $8.65 billion is being spent there. So where do you think the banks are reaching to cover their expenses on that rollout? Right? They're going to be reaching back to you to make them whole on that. So again, this is all a lot of money that's going down the tubes. So let's jump right in and let's start taking a look at some billing tricks, okay, some of the things that they're going to do. And these get pretty simple, but then we'll go into a little more complicated stuff here in just a second. So the bucket billing is what they really call kind of where you'll look at your statement and to say qualified, mid-qualified, non-qualified. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this particular one and just say this. If this is you, just change processors. You won't do any worse. You're already at the bottom. So it's kind of like on a scale of 1 to 10, this is an 11, okay? So you're absolutely at the bottom. You can't get any worse. No matter how bad of a deal you jump to, it will have to at least be equal or better than what you currently have. Numeric billing. Some of you might find yourself in this one, and this is pretty deceptive. Now, a couple things worth noting on this. The discount rate on this numeric billing platform disappeared. Now, for those of you who don't know what a discount rate is, that's how many basis points that you're paying. So you should have something on your paperwork, on your statements each month that says, oh, my discount rate is 5 basis points, 10 basis points, you know, whatever that magic number is, it should show up. Well, a couple of years ago, what they did is they just took that off the statements. They said, well, you know, it was confusing merchants, and they didn't like to look at all the numbers on there, so they just asked us to remove what we were charging them. Now, again, interchange fees, those are the fees that go back to the processing networks and other things, but the discount rate is the processor's pure markup in the profit. Now, what you'll be able to tell when you look at a numeric billing statement is it's going to have little codes like this. Okay, and of course then, you know, so you'll be able to tell something like a $15 to $15.99 is going to be like, for instance, a debit card. The problem though with a debit card is something, you know, to the fact that if you have a check card or / debit card, kind of using that term is the same, if you have that and it says, well, hey, that was a check card that cleared. Well, okay, but did it clear, let's say you do the math on your statement, you see that it cleared at 2%, right? Well, was the raw cost of that 0.05 and they were making a ton on you, obviously 1.95%? Or did they clear at 2% and the actual fee was 1.6 where they were making 40 basis points? Both would be extremely high, but one is much higher than the other. But if all you see is check card, then you have no way of knowing just how much you're being overbilled. Okay, then you have things like purchasing card. Same thing. Purchasing card clears as low as 0.40, not even 0.5%, but it can actually clear around almost 3%. So again, if you don't know where that purchasing card is clearing, and there's almost 30 categories in the purchasing card categories, so then how do you really then justify it, right? How do you say, well, man, all of a sudden this cleared at 2%. Well, did they underbill me 0.95 or did they overbill me 1.60? So again, if you don't know how to really see, or you can't see, I should say, the actual fees, you have no way of knowing. Then we have the little 1S category, which is kind of interesting, is it says here the bridge to nowhere, but actually we've kind of coined that the fee to nowhere, meaning it's not a real fee. Now a lot of people say, whoa, wait a minute. Are you saying they just put a flat bogus fee on my statement? They just take money out that really they shouldn't? Well, yeah, I just kind of covered that in the previous slide. There's no oversight. Okay, it's a non-regulated industry. So if you can fathom going back in time to when you're standing out in the desert, two cowboys, and you're just bartering, okay, hey man, I'm dying of thirst, and you have a horse, and I'll trade you a bottle of water for the horse, kind of thing. Nobody's coming out. The SEC's not coming out. Nobody's coming out to your rescue to say, hey, you can't do that. A bottle of water is only worth $1 and a horse is worth several $1,000s. No, whatever deal you make is the deal you get, and they can do anything to you, and they do. We'll show you some examples of that in a minute. And, of course, bundled billing. Bundled billing is something that's pretty common. Is what they do is they take the discount rate and then they add it with things. So they'll add it with what's called a base interchange fee or dues and assessments. So they'll bundle it together with things. And so while they're calling it a discount rate, it's really a bundled rate. But again, I go back to there's no rules here, meaning cars, right? In our world, a car is a car. But if we identify a car in the merchant processing world, a car could be, well, it could be a go-kart, it could be it could be a bumper car, it could be a moped, it could even be a ship, it could be a train, it could be any mode of transportation, or it could even be a shed. Because I can name it anything I want to name it, because there's no oversight that says this is this and this is that. Unlike regular banking, right, a cashier's check is not just a check, it's a cashier's check. And it definitively has rules and regulations set to the term cashier's check, okay, versus, say, just a standard check. But when we get into, again, if we were to take that world and move it over into the merchant processing world, a cashier's check could be any form of payment. It could be food stamps, it could be a check card, it could be cold cash, it can be anything that I want to call a cashier's check, because I can just rename things as I see fit. The most important part about this slide, though, is knowing this, is your discount rate should run between 1 and 7 basis points. So first of all, identify your discount rate on your statement. If you can't, that's problem number one, okay? So let's assume you can. Then we move on to the next thing. How much are you paying for your discount rate? Well, if you are a brand new company and you did $100 this month, well, let's just say $10 this month, your discount rate should not be higher than 7 basis points. So in other words, that's the highest it ever should be. So if you're at least over 7, you're already in too high of category. And don't let somebody say, well, it's because you're too small, et cetera, et cetera. A dog walker, a person selling pretzels on the street, it doesn't really matter how small you are, your rate should never be higher than 7 basis points. If you're a larger company, then obviously you're going to be pushing much closer to that 1% mark. So you want to make sure that you can identify that. The other thing that you want to make sure is when you're looking at your statement is you're not duped into thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm not even paying even 1%, right? I'm paying 0.02. Right? I mean, I'm paying nothing here. No, remember now, this has a percentage sign. This does not. Okay, so you have to apply the percentage sign into this equation and convert these things. So when you see a rate like this, remember, that's 2%. So we see statements every day where this is like, for instance, a 45, and somebody thinks, oh man, I'm paying 4.5 basis points. No, you're paying 4.5%. Okay, so you got to make sure that you understand how to read these things. And while it is basic math, it's just there to be deceptive. And if somebody doesn't take the calculator to it, they don't know. So let's talk about debit cards for a second. There again, there's debit cards, and they really fall into two categories. They're going to fall into a regulated debit card and a non-regulated debit card. So your regulated debit cards come from the big boys, the Bank of Americas, the Wells Fargos, the Chases, etc. In other words, they're coming from the larger banks, right, and larger financial institutions. Those cards are regulated. The government came on the scene a few years ago and capped them and said, hey, you have to reduce that rate. Now, I wrote an article. It's a great article. You can find it on Credit Today. Also, I think you can find a link maybe to it on my LinkedIn profile to where it says major cover-up or major screw-up. Because at the end of the day, they made the one law, the one attempt to put some oversight into this industry. They said you have to force the transaction basically down to 5 basis points. And this is from the issuer, meaning, let's say, in this case, Chase or Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whichever the case, all being equal here. So 0.05, so Bank of America, for instance, if they issue a card, they have to sell it to the processor at 0.05, okay? However, the processor, which sometimes can be one of the same, so Chase can be the issuer and the processor, or vice versa, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, etc., but it doesn't matter who the processor is. The processor has the right to either pass it on to you, or the processor can take and keep that for themselves. So they said, hey, you have to lower it basically to yourself. So in other words, Chase, you as a bank, when you issue this credit card, this debit card, you have to reduce the interchange fees down to 0.05. So when you're selling it to Chase, the processor, Chase, the processor, is getting it at a discount. But when Chase gives it to you, the merchant, well, they can charge anything they want. I mean, really? That's oversight? Yeah, I don't think so. So basically, one division has to reduce the fees to the other division, and then they call that oversight. But to the merchant, actually, no, it doesn't matter. Now, a non-regulated debit card, they're still basically going to be running about that 1.6%, so it's really kind of a non-issue. So let's take an example, though, and look at this. So here's a company, for instance, and this company has a Visa sales discount of 1.89%, meaning that's their bundled rate. Now, remember, we talked about the bundled rate and all that a while ago. So this is the bundled rate this company has, 1.89%. Now then, they give the Visa debit sales discount of 1.61%. So somebody that's kind of paying attention in this class would say, yay, we're getting that reduction given back to us. We're saving 28 basis points. They gave us that debit break, right? They returned part of that money. But wait a minute. You're supposed to be getting back 59 basis points. So what happened? Well, the processor kept the extra 31 basis points. That's what happened on that. So they don't have to pass that along. They could have said, hey, you're paying 1.89 for credit and debit, which is we see that quite often as well, right? They give you no break at all. And believe it or not, we've actually seen where it's in reverse, where they actually surcharge people to take debit cards. So they'll say, well, your debit, your sales transactions are 1.89, but maybe your debits are going to be 2.10. Okay, they actually raise the rates. Again, no oversight, so they can do what they want. So in this particular case, though, it kind of is deceiving because the poor merchant thinks, hey, I'm doing okay here. I got my rebate, but you only got a partial rebate. They actually kept the other money. Here's another example of this. So in this particular case, what they're doing is they're just the Visa debit card, they're just putting a dash there. So instead of giving back a discounted amount, right, they're just actually saying, well, we're not even going to try to deceive you, right? We're actually just going to just kind of just skip over it. So in this case, the processor there again made an extra 2.27% on all the debit transactions because again, they should be receiving a credit there, but instead of receiving a credit, meaning they've got a higher bundled rate. The interchange fees on the debit card are going to be much less. They should be receiving a credit. So in this case, the merchant or the processor is just not even talking about it. They're just like, we'll just put a hyphen there and just pretend like, oh, wow, don't even know what goes there. And, hey, the merchant's relieved because they're going, yay, we didn't even get billed for those debit cards, right? No, you got billed for those debit cards, and you actually paid a hefty fee for that debit card. The other thing is where a lot of people get overbilled, is the gross versus net. Okay, what that means is simply this. Every company has returns. Okay, so in this particular case, this company had $7,000 in returns that month, right? But what was happening is they were getting billed the same percentage, okay, of the 2.06 bundled rate. So again, so think about this. So a lot of times companies will say, well, I got a $100 average ticket. I sell a $100 widget. And then all of a sudden somebody says, you shipped me too many, or I need to return it, or, whatever the reason is that you need to post a credit, right? So you're thinking, okay, they returned the item. I gave them back their 100. I'm made whole. Well, wait a minute. If you paid 3%, let's say, for that transaction, and they return that item, you get back your $100, but did you get your $100, or did you get your 3% back on that $100? So no, so now you're out $3. Right? So in this particular case, when you look at it and you do the math on this company is actually, in theory, being duped an extra 3 basis points. So again, going back to the discount rate, somebody says, well, I'm only paying 5 basis points, so my deal's not so bad. Okay, but if they're keeping all of your interchange credits, right, that you're due back, that same company, being equal, would then now be paying 8 basis points, because by keeping your interchange rebates, they're actually passing on a higher fee back to you because it's money due you. So imagine if you went to a car dealership, for instance, and they said, hey, there's a $500 rebate coming back to you, and the finance guy puts his hand over the paperwork and just says sign here and has that $500 go back to his pocket. You ended up losing that $500, whether you realize it or not. You may go, well, hey, I agreed to buy that car for $30,000. Yes, but it should have been a net of $29,500 because there was $500 due back to you that you never got. So this is an interesting one. Enhanced billing. I love this because these guys don't even try to hide it, right? I mean, it should say enhanced pay or enhanced commissions, but they call it enhanced billing. They actually name it. I think that's pretty bold. Most people who cheat people don't actually come up with a name for it, but these guys do. So if you look at this statement, there's nothing here that looks wrong. I mean, it's not until we do a little bit of digging on the math that all of a sudden we say, well, wait a minute, something's not quite right. So when we take the $444 and divide that back into $31,000, then we come up with 1.41%. Now keep in mind, they already have a base rate of this particular deal of 2.23. Okay, so when we tack on that 1.41, they're paying 3.64. Now, even all of that, you might go, okay, means nothing to me. Everything's fine. Okay, well, what is, first of all, Visa Credit IRF, right? Well, that just means it's a missing zip code. Well, for some merchants, and depending on how you are set up, it could be a missing zip code or it could be a mismatch zip code. Okay, and to help you guys out, a little free piece of advice there. If you are set up as a retail merchant, meaning face-to-face transactions, you will downgrade to IRF if you just get the zip code wrong, meaning you put it in, but it doesn't match, you downgrade to IRF. However, if you're a MOTO, mail order, telephone order, so in other words, card not present, not e-commerce, but just card not present, right? So you're taking phone orders and that type of stuff, sending out electronic invoices and collecting in that method, right? That's MOTO. And in MOTO, you only have to make an attempt to get the zip code right. Now, when I say make an attempt, that attempt has to be accurate to some degree. It can't be 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of stuff. It can't be all 9s, all 1s, or anything like that. But I could just put in any random, 5-digit number, right? that's, you know, not an obvious, right? And then the system's automatically going to take it, and you're not going to downgrade. So that's kind of a nice perk sometimes to be able to program your system to be able to do that, or to tell your sales reps, hey, if you don't know the zip code, just enter any zip code. Enter your own home zip code. The only one caveat to that you don't want to do is do not enter in your company address zip code over and over and over and over and over, because they'll catch that. They'll realize that if you're a Moto merchant, not everyone is buying in your area, right? So it's going to eventually catch up to you. So random 5-digit codes, okay? So that's just a little freebie on the side there. So that in of itself, like I say, doesn't seem that harmful, but it's because they didn't put in the zip code. Now, they could just put in missing zip code, right? But that would mean they want you to know and they want you to stop. So instead they use terms like ERF, because then if you call up the credit card processor and you say, what's ERF? They say it's electronic interchange rate fee. Well, what is electronic interchange rate fee? Well, you didn't do something right. It's a downgrade. Okay, so they're not going to explain to you it's a zip code and make sure you do this and all that I just explained. No, instead, they're just going to say, well, something went wrong. Okay, and like I say, if they wanted to make this easy for you, they would just say missing zip code, right? And then you'd be like, oh, I'll stop that. But if they say ERF, you're like, was that even good? Is it bad? I don't even know, right? And so you don't even know from looking at this that there's something wrong. Here's a bigger thing too, though, that kind of rubs me raw. I'll be honest, and as I kind of sidestep for just a second to vent about these type of stupid things, is what difference does it make if you put in the zip code? All right. I mean, if somebody owes you $100, they pay you $100. You collect $100. We're moving on. Now, if this was a MasterCard transaction, I'm not promoting MasterCard because MasterCard has its own flaws, but in this particular case, MasterCard says, I don't care if you put in a zip code, and if you do, I don't care if you get it wrong, right? But Visa, on the other hand, says, well, wait a minute, here's a real money maker for us. If they get the zip code wrong or they don't put it in, we get to nail them for 76 basis points. Now, if you call Visa on the carpet and you say, Visa, here's the deal. Why did you charge me 76 basis points because I didn't put in the zip code? Well, Visa will say, well, it's obvious. It's because it's a high-risk transaction. Okay. So in other words, it's got greater odds of being a fraud, right? And they'll be like, yeah, that's what it's all about, right? Okay, but if it is a fraudulent transaction, then who eats that? Does Visa eat that? No. Does the processor eat that? No. Who eats it? Oh, yeah, that's right, the merchant. So as I kind of remind people, so let me break this down in more plain English so that people can really grasp the craziness is the best way I can word this. Imagine your 16-year-old son or daughter starts driving and your insurance company says your rates are going up because your 16-year-old's driving, and let's be honest, we know they're probably going to go out and wreck the car. You go, yeah, I'll give you that. That's probably true. So here we go. 3 months later, guess what? You know, your child then wrecks the car. You call back the insurance company. You say, you know, it turns out you're right. They wrecked the car. They're like, oh, that's too bad. You're like, well, I need to file a claim. They're like, oh, well, no, we don't cover you. What? I thought my rates went up because my 16-year-old son or daughter was driving. Yes, it did. But they're not covered? Oh, no, they're not covered on your policy. Absolutely not. No, you'll have to cover all those repairs on your own. So you just charged me 76 basis points because it's got a higher risk of fraud, but I have to eat the fraud. Yeah. Now, if anybody thinks that sounds normal to them, let me know or I should say let your nearest counseling service know, because it's just not right. I mean, the math doesn't even begin to add up to that. But that's the good part of this story. So let's get back to where, before I got off on my little rant, the enhanced billing. What is that? Well, the processor says, hey, if Visa is going to unnecessarily mark them up 76 basis points and they're getting away with it and the merchant's not doing anything about it, I say we get in on it. So now imagine, again, putting this in the visual to where you can understand this. You're walking home and somebody comes up and mugs you, right? And somebody's beating you up and they're ripping off your jewelry and they're grabbing your wallet and they're taking all your stuff. And some person that you've hired to be your partner in business says, well, man, if that's going down, hey, I hate to tell you, man, but I'm going to take your jacket. I'm going to rip off your shoes. I'm going to get what I can get too. So, because your processor always uses the words, which bugs me, but they always use the word, we're your partner. You're not my partner. You're not even remotely my partner. You're charging me as much as you can, right? You're trying to make as much of a profit as you can. And in this particular case, when Visa is basically unfairly charging me, you then double down and say you want your extra cut as well. So again, while somebody's mugging me, my business partner is actually going into my pocketbook and trying to get as much as they can as well. But the good news is they're going to invite me to play golf next week, you know, and they're going to fly out on a jet to come and take me to lunch and stuff. So I guess there is some benefit to having business partners that treat you that way. But personally, I'd rather buy my own lunch. That's just me. So missing interchange volume. So missing interchange volume is pretty much says what's wrong here. Well, the missing volume. Why is that important? Well, because the way we determine how cards clear and if they're clearing at the right rate is we take the actual processing volume here, or the actual fee taken rather, and we divide it into the processing volume. And by doing that, then that gives us the rate. So we could then theoretically look at that and say, hey, the rate basically, you know, or the fee divided into the fee that they charge me versus the processing fees, when we divide that, we get the actual percentage. Then I can say, okay, what should have a data rate 1 cleared at? What should have a data rate 2 cleared at? And so that gives me the ability to be able to calculate that rate. So in this case, it's also kind of the same thing, missing interchange. So there's another common looking statement. So when we look at this one, what do we know about this one? We know it's a WorldCard, but so what? It's WorldCard, MasterCard. It doesn't really tell me anything, right? So by knowing it's a WorldCard and by knowing it's a MasterCard, we know that they took out $43, but that really doesn't answer anything, right? So what don't we know about this transaction? It probably is more telling than what we do know, okay? We don't know the rate, right? And if we could figure out the rate, which, again, we're not going to be able to, okay? Then the question is, well, because we don't know what kind of card it was, so let's say it's a WorldCard, that would have cleared at 0.15. Data rate 3 corporate would have cleared 0.22, and a WorldCard transaction at 47. You know, and there again, even a WorldCard Data 1 at 57. So at the end of the day, we really don't know if we could even calculate that fee. So in other words, let's say the volume was there, and we can say, oh, well, this is the fee that they actually charged me, but we don't know what kind of card it was. So if I did pay a 20 basis point bump, did they gouge me for an extra 5? Or did they underbill me on this one over here or this one on here or here, right? So am I getting an extra good deal or am I getting an extra worse deal? Because at the end of the day, they're hiding it. But you got to ask yourself, why hide it? I mean, there's plenty of room, right? There's plenty of room everywhere. I mean, this doesn't go across. If you look at your statements and you look at this header doesn't go all the way across your paperwork. And what is a July BB188 transaction cleared at, right? All this is wasted data. We already have the date here, right? We already know this cleared in July. And what's BB188 mean? Well, call up your processor and ask them that. You know, I hope you like hold music, right? So this is just fill-in data. It's just junk. It's just junk stuff. You know, I mean, it's a little bit like when you sometimes watch a politician on TV, right? They're talking for 20 minutes and you're going, I must be really stupid because I just have no idea what they said. I mean, but they did talk. And they talked a lot. They talked like for 20 minutes trying to explain this. But I still have no comprehension what it is that they're even talking about, right? So processors do the same thing. They'll give you 13 pages to make you think like, look, we've shown you all this. We've laid it all out in fine print. You know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And you look at that 13 pages and you go, you know, there must be something wrong with me. I mean, I got all the data. I got a calculator, pretty sharp person. Matter of fact, I got a master's in you know, math, and at the end of the day, I still can't calculate this, right? So don't feel stupid. Trust me, it's not that the math is there, the math is being hidden. Now, the nice thing is with this particular company, though, They make it easy for people. They don't even begin to insult your intelligence. They give you a one-page statement. They just go, hey, here's the deal. We took out $764 for MasterCard transactions. Okay? There you go. Don't know what to tell you. We just took out $764. We're not going to go into why. We know you're not going to read it anyway. We're not going to bore you with all the lies. We're just going to say, hey, it's none of your business why we're taking all this money. So kind of an interesting concept when you think about that. Then you got made-up fees. And I just love absolutely these made-up fees. So again, thinking, well, processor can't do this or this, right? Well, they can. So if you look at this one, you've got assessments. Now remember, assessments go to Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. So that's why you see in front of this one Discover, in front of this one MasterCard, in front of this one MasterCard again, and yet we have Visa down here. But in network acquired fee, guess what we don't have? We don't have anything that says Visa or MasterCard or Discover or American Express. And it says network acquired fee. So when you get a chance, Google this one, network acquired fee. Because here's what Google is going to show you. They're going to pop up something, and it's going to say Visa fixed network acquirer fee. So see, very similar. Not acquired fee, but acquire, right? And there's going to be a Visa fixed in front of it. Now, it's not a percentage. It's a sliding scale dollar amount. It's not a percentage amount, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the situation here. So basically what they did is they took a real fee that gets assessed. They made up a fee that sounds very similar to it. So it's a little bit like you ask your teenager, why did you get in so late last night? And they begin to mumble, you know, and they're not really talking plain, and you're trying to figure out if they had a flat tire or what exactly happened, but they like to mumble kind of their way through it. Well, this is what the processor's doing. Oh, you know, and it sounds close enough. And okay, so when you look into it, you're like, oh yeah, that must be what they were talking about. Okay, well, no, this is just pure outright lying. It might as well be a condo fee, girlfriend fee, you know, midlife crisis, extra commission fee, whatever. But it has nothing to do with what they're doing at your business. So the wrong way or the right way. So as we kind of get a little closer into this coming to an end, so the wrong way or the right way has a lot to do with how your transactions are going to clear. Okay, so let's talk about why the transaction downgraded. So let me also, before I answer that or get into that, explain what a downgrade is, because there's a lot of people probably on the phone that go, well, what is even a downgrade? A downgrade just means it didn't clear at the best rate. Okay, so in other words, level 3, which is where most of you should be on most of your transactions. So level 3 means, man, that cleared at the best rate possible. So if that card didn't clear at level 3 and that transaction then cleared at a level 2, that would be classified a downgrade. If it cleared at data rate 1, it's still a downgrade, but that makes it even a bigger downgrade. Now also let me be clear too, because Visa recently, between Visa and MasterCard, they've tried to make sure that if you guys even had a clue of what was going on, let's muddy up the waters a little bit. Okay? So you'll hear people say things like me, we'll talk about level 3, and people will be like, are you kidding me, man? We get level 4, right? So what happens is it used to be that level, right, was the Visa term, data was the MasterCard term. And so now what they're doing is that's how the transaction categories were, but to make sure that they kind of muddy things up, now they come out with what they call spend levels, okay? And so when you look at your statement, you can't really tell hardly, unless you're really very good at interchange, the difference between how a card clears and what the card is called, and meaning a spend level. So for instance, you could have a level or a corporate card that is a corporate card level 3, but it's a spend level 3, meaning how much that person has the ability to spend on that corporate card, basically, right? It's a spend level. So they're giving you a spend level, or I should even say spin, as in spin you around, you know, but they're playing games with that. So then people go, oh yeah, I'm getting all these level 3s. I see level 3 all over my statement. Yeah, they told me I should be getting level 3. I'm getting level 3. Matter of fact, I'm even getting level 4. That guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. I'm getting even a higher level than what he's talking about, right? No, those are spin levels. So you want to make sure that you're getting a processing level 3, Okay, so there again, so that's kind of how the transactions and how they downgrade and all of that, and there again, the very fundamentals of what a downgrade even is. So this is something though that most people don't know. And I say most people, I mean I might bump into one person a year, and I do a lot of speaking all over the country on this, but most people have no idea what their processing level is. So if you're going to write something down, now's the time to write it down, right? Because granted, you're going to get this slide later, but I want you to really know this. The spend level, or the processing level rather, is your level that you're allowed to process before a transaction is held. Now, I'm not saying that they're not going to clear it. I'm not saying you're not going to get paid. It's just that they'll hold it. So, prime example, your average ticket is $10,000, and you run a lot of those all day long, $10,000 transactions. But then all of a sudden somebody buys something today from you for $25,000. Well, let's say your processing limit was 20. So what's going to happen is the processing networks will then send that off to the side, or the processor rather, will send that off to the side and say, well, somebody needs to look at that and see if it's a real transaction. Well, they'll look at that and say, oh yeah, that's a real transaction. You can see this person who spent 25 has been spending 20 there, oh my gosh, like every other day, right? So this $25,000 transaction is not a big deal, okay? So they put it back into play. The problem is, though, while they were looking at it, and they will keep it a minimum of 3 days, even if it takes them a minimum of 3 minutes to clear it, they'll keep it on ice for 3 days. Why? Because when they release it, that transaction automatically goes from a level 3 or possibly even a large ticket rate, which is like next to nothing, and then downgrades all the way to standard. So when you look at your statement, you see these standard transactions and you're going, wow, that's really a lot of fees for standard. Well, yeah, because standard's going to run you about 3%. So the problem is they're still clearing those transactions for you, but they're penalizing them because they're setting them off to the side. Okay, so you can work with your processor to get your spend level worked on, or your processing level. I apologize, I keep saying spend level. Your processing level, or limit, I should say, reviewed. You want to have your processing limit in writing. So if somebody says to you, hey, your processing limit's 30,000, 10,000, 5,000, whatever it is, you want that in writing on their letterhead by an officer. Cindy tells you on the phone, this is your processing limit, so what? Doesn't matter, because Cindy's not going to work there next week when you call back. And even if Cindy emails you, it'd be like, well, she never said that, and emails don't hold up. Okay, they don't hold up. So you have to have something in print on old-fashioned paper with letterhead with an officer. Because again, if it's just Cindy who works in customer service, they'll say, well, Cindy never should have told you that. Well, yeah, but I just lost $1,000 in interchange fees because Cindy gave me the wrong information. Yeah, well, we had a talk with her about that, and she knows better now. What about my $1,000? Well, sorry, you're out your $1,000. The minute you put it on bank letterhead or processor letterhead signed by an officer, you can now sue them, and they will be held accountable for that, and they know this. So, A, rest assured, they're not going to give you the wrong information, and B, they're not going to play any games if they should hold it and you call them and hold them accountable for it. The other thing, wrong MCC code. That just means that you're set up wrong, and we see this all the time. Prime example, your electrical distributor, and yet they've got you set up as a manufacturer, a concrete company, or a hotel, or a gas station, or a C-store. The list goes on and on. You got to make sure you're set up with the right MCC code, because at the end of the day, that right MCC code determines how your cards should or should not be clearing through the interchange system. So you want to make sure. And guys, I realize too that I'm throwing so many of these acronyms at you that it's probably so overwhelming. Now, at the end of the day, you're going to be like, okay, maybe there's going to be a little Q&A time. Maybe I can get all these things answered. Well, the reality is, if your brain can absorb all of this and you've got 30 questions, that's going to really be pretty impressive. But my guess is you're not going to have enough time to absorb all of this, and you're going to want to go back and review it and stuff like that. But keep in mind, whether you just want to chat with someone or call someone, you can pick up the phone and call anybody on our team, and they will answer all these questions in more depth. But obviously, for the sake of a webinar, I cannot go into all of these details. This is just to give you the surface. But certainly, there's no strings attached. You call up, you just say, hey, man, tell me about that MCC code, and we will break things like that down for you, or, how does the wrong limit work and all that. We will work with you to address all of those things. We're not going to make you sign up to use our services, et cetera, just because you want to ask questions. So wrong interchange flag, basically the same thing. Wrong interchange flag is kind of there again, whether I talked about earlier, like Moto, e-commerce, and things of that nature. So let's say there again, you may be set up as a distributor, but they could have you set up as retail as a distributor versus Moto as a distributor. Then in some cases, you're both. You're a distributor and you have a walk-in presence where people are coming in and picking up things, right? But then also you're doing it online, that's e-commerce, and then also you're invoicing people with the larger accounts you have. You have accounts receivable upstairs and you're invoicing those people. So you're basically e-commerce, Moto, and retail. Those all are different interchange flags, okay? So you got to make sure the right ones are applied to the right places. Remember a while ago when I talked about the zip code. Hey, if you're Moto, it works this way. If you're retail, it works this way. You have different sets of rules. So the easiest way to make you understand the thing here is, bottom line is, you don't want to hand in a math assignment to a history teacher, because I got news. You're going to get all F's, okay? Even if you got the right answers, all F's, because you're handing in the right thing to the wrong person, okay? So wrong gateway, everybody should be on level 3. The only time you should be on a level 2 gateway is if you're doing strictly very little any type of purchasing cards, business cards, corporate cards, or any of that. I mean, so if you're running like one corporate card, every blue moon, then it's fine to be on a level 2 gateway. But if you're running any amount, really, of any significance, I mean, 5, 10 transactions even a month, in the corporate world, the business purchasing and things of that nature, you want to make sure you're on a level 3 gateway. So again, just making sure you're on the right gateway. That's another whole topic there. I mean, that's easy enough. You just say, hey, I need to make sure I'm on level 3 gateway. Now, let me also say, people will say, well, these gateways are very, very difficult, and level 3 is extremely difficult, blah, blah, blah. Go out to easygateway.org. easygateway.org, I believe is what it is. Go out to there. It shows you examples, okay, of there again, how simple it is. Processors will try to tell you it's 30 plus fields. The reality is it's 6 fields. If it's a repeat customer, it's only 2 fields, okay? It is extremely easy. It's extremely easy to get it on e-commerce. You can do it on a mobile phone application in the field. I mean, level 3 is very easy. But again, why is your processor telling you it's not? Well, because there again, they want your cards to downgrade. They want to charge you higher fees. So they're not going to tell you about this stuff. But level 3 is way easy. So don't let anybody tell you that it's not. So as we kind of come down here to the end of this almost, the questions they hope you'll never ask is, do you have an interchange management program? They always say yes. Say, great. Please give me an example of how it helped me with my past or previous downgrades, right? And of course, that's when they're going to give you elevator music. What is my discount rate? No, they'll tell you that, it's, whatever. But again, you should be 2 to 7, never more. And then, of course, you want to say, are you marking up my base interchange rates on the downgraded transactions, right? So in other words, on the interchange, are you marking it up? Because remember, they will mark it up. Remember when I told you about the enhanced billing? They'll surcharge your downgrades. Make sure you're asking them about that, okay? And then, was my statement reviewed last month for avoidable downgrades? Because they always tell you they're your partner, right? They're supposed to be looking out for you. Okay, who received the report? Elevator music again. All your answers in writing by an officer. We just talked about that just a second ago, okay? It's got to be an officer. It's got to be on bank letterhead in order to be binding. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed today. Hopefully you guys will realize that you have learned a ton. And again, you may have not learned everything, certainly, but at the end of the day, you should hopefully have enough that makes you a little bit armed and dangerous. And then there again, go out to our website, DisWeAudit.com. 90% of what we do for free, so feel free to pick our brains. You can talk to us about anything from PCI compliance, credit card processing, all this stuff that we covered today, and no one's ever going to, say, hey, I can't talk to you unless you buy our services, okay? So we're not like that at all. We're here to help businesses. So bottom line is we'll go ahead and open it up, kind of the Q&A, and then see if you guys have any questions, and we'll kind of go from there. And there again, if you need my contact information, feel free to jot that down from here. But anyway, I'll go ahead, and I apologize for talking fast. I know we got a little bit of a late start, so I did want to try to, as the pilots on Southwest do, make up a little lost time. So anyway, we'll open it up to questions here.
So Robert, I opened up the chat question box, and so far I don't see any questions, so I have a feeling that, like I said, your presentation was so detailed that people are probably just absorbing a lot of the information.
Or they fell asleep.
No, I don't think so. I can see who's logged on, and we still have a huge number of attendees, so that's not it.
Great.
But if we don't have any questions that are going to be submitted through the chat box, I would invite everyone to visit Robert's website at weaudit.com, reach out to him and his team. And I want to thank Robert on behalf of our association and all of our credit groups for being so generous with his time and taking a lot of time to really explain this stuff that can be kind of overwhelming. Robert, I know that there were a number of folks that, due to vacation schedules, could not attend today's webinar, so at some point you and I will chat, and I would love to invite you back to address our membership again when It's not peak vacation season, okay?
Sounds great. Well, as you can tell, and we're very passionate about this and love to help.
Fantastic. I thank you again. I think this is a fantastic presentation, and for those of you on the phone, like I said, we'll send the presentation out within the next 24 hours or so. And also within 24 hours, the presentation will be saved and archived as a webinar for Federation and National Network members. So with that, I thank you all, and have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.